Said I needed to say, help me acid, show me the way.
This girl is on an LSD trip. The music, a song of praise to LSD, a song of praise to acid. Millbrook, New York, home and temple of the high priest of acid, Dr. Timothy Leary. The ex-Harvard professor, 3 million Americans have taken the acid trip. The mystic, who uses LSD to find God and may well be the first acid martyr. I asked Tim Leary if the acid experience has changed him.
Well, LSD has changed me religiously. I was a smart aleck, Harvard professor, bourbon-drinking atheist, intellectual, before I took LSD. Now I'm God intoxicated. Has it changed me my personality? I don't think so. And I want to make this clear. LSD is no instant psychoanalysis. It's not going to change your television personality. It's not going to make you a better game player. There are no guarantees here of any change in personality. I don't think I've changed. What LSD does, it gives you more energy. So I play out the Timothy Leary game on a broader canvas. I've got more energy available to me. I'm more turned on, so more people listen to me. But I think I still have the same old faults, the same old selfishness, the same old tendency to deceive myself. See, what's happening in the United States today, as millions of people, particularly young people, are taking LSD, they're just turning off. They won't make war for you anymore. They're a dropout generation. They're talking about flower power. They're forming, as we have here in Millbrook, their own little religious cults. Your rock and roll bands, most of them, believe it or not, are little religious cults. And the songs they're singing are religious, oriental, mystic.
Help me acid, show me the way. Look out, baby, my blood's turning cold. Come on, love, right into my soul.
I say to the young kids, form your own religion. Do as it's always been done. Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
And turn on they do, using the acid to blow their minds, seeking within themselves. There are 10 million different LSD trips. There is a thin line between the good trip and the bad trip.
You have to approach LSD with trembling and with fear and with love to use it for harmony and beauty. What's going on in the United States today is a revolution in consciousness facilitated by these psychedelic chemicals. I frankly don't think that the human being is ready for LSD. As a matter of fact, I don't think the human being is ready for fire. But the trouble is, LSD is here. And what are we going to do about it? Should we pass a law against fire and say only doctors can have fire? Should we pass a law against LSD and say only doctors can take this trip to the divine process, go out of their minds, use this inner microscope? Of course we can't, because it's here and it's going to be used. That's the problem.
There is much evidence that the lifeblood of the LSD user can be changed, that the chromosomes in the blood can be damaged by the acid. And it is the chromosomes that carry genetic information from one generation to the next. It is the chromosomes that determine whether the next generation conforms to our normality. The LSD user tends to reject the warning or reply that the benefits of LSD outweigh its dangers. LSD researchers like Dr. Kurt Hirschhorn, chief of the Division of Medical Genetics at Mount Sinai Hospital, New York, have few doubts about LSD and chromosomal damage.
This cell has 2 broken chromosomes. The one just below the middle of the cell has 2 breaks in it, while the one just to the right of it has a single break. These findings are rather similar to those that have been previously described by other doctors who have taken cells from normal individuals and cultured them in the presence of LSD. In this case, we have taken the cells from a patient who has been on LSD and added no further LSD to the culture. Findings like these have been described from patients who have received radiation, who have had various viral diseases, and who have leukemia and other cancers. It is also known that such breaks, when produced by radiation, can be followed by an increased incidence of leukemia in the patients and other cancers, as well as in the production of congenital malformations in the offspring of such patients, as well as in their children's children.
This is the heart of the LSD user's dilemma. Has he the right to play acid roulette with his children? The probing into LSD continues. Associate Professor of Pharmacology at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York, Dr. Murray Jarvik, experiments on monkeys.
We were interested in seeing what effect LSD would have on visual discrimination performance in monkeys and also on memory. It's been shown by a number of investigators, not only me, that the drug does have very strange effects in animals. Under some circumstances, it impairs performance, and under others, it actually improves performance. But a great deal more work remains to be done before we can really understand what the drug does and how it is doing it.
Dr. Jarvik wants to know how LSD affects the rhesus monkey. He injects the drug into monkeys to find out whether he can duplicate man's LSD experience in the animal closest to man. Dr. Jarvik says that the LSD effects can be seen in the rhesus monkey, yet LSD remains an enigma.
Performance on a test of short-term memory was impaired by rather small doses of LSD in our monkeys. We used what's known as a delayed alternation test and found that as little as 5 gamma, that is 5 millionths of a gram per kilogram, was capable of impairing performance in these animals. On the other hand, other investigators have found that very low doses of LSD would improve performance in certain types of visual discrimination tests, an ability of an animal to discriminate flicker from steady light. The most important thing that is still unexplained is the mechanism whereby this drug produces its effects. Despite a tremendous amount of research that's gone into this, and there must be well over 1,000 research papers on the effects of LSD, we still don't know what the basic mechanism of action of this drug is in the brain.
Dr. Daniel Casriel, Medical Superintendent of a Drug Rehabilitation Center on Staten Island, New York.
DATOP is many things. It is a non-profit corporation for the rehabilitation of addicts. It is a therapeutic community run almost exclusively by ex-addicts who help themselves and others to get well. Here in DATOP we have perhaps a half a dozen or a dozen people who have used LSD. We treat them exactly the same as we treat the other type of chemical users. The method of treatment is primarily a group interaction.
They made that whole scene down in the village with, you know, peyote, mescaline, marijuana, morning glory seeds, and the whole rest of it. But the whole scene is just that, man, because, you know, like, I never had any friends really in school at all. And down there, it's easier. You know, what do you have to do to be hip? You just got to use as much as anybody else is using, and you're accepted. It's much easier to get accepted there. You don't have to try hard, you know?
You don't have to be a person. You don't have to be yourself. All you have to do is use the drug and say a couple of words you heard somebody else say, like consciousness expansion.
Yeah. And then you've got a good excuse. Then you've got a really beautiful excuse. Well, I'm using it to find out the inner meanings of life, you know. They said that you could see inside yourself and all things like that. And I guess that's what they're really looking for. They're trying to, you know, find out who they were through the use of the drug, which I guess you really, you know, I'm sure you can't ever do.
Yeah, one of the fellows was telling me once that he had a friend that took a trip on that, and he actually believed, I guess this is how it works on your mind, and he actually believed that he could stop a car, and this was in his neighborhood, and he ran in front of this car, and naturally, you know, like he got wasted, you know, and the fellow died.
Dr. Casriel is outspoken about the dangers of LSD.
LSD is a very dangerous drug. To me, it is much more dangerous than heroin. And certainly, as LSD becomes more in vogue, you'll see greater and greater problems with it. I've been called upon to evaluate a boy who murdered while under the influence of LSD. I've known people who committed suicide under the influence of LSD, and I've known many who have become psychotic weeks and months after having used LSD. And even for those who do not become psychotic, those who have habituated themselves with the use of LSD seem to be changed and different. They are emotionally flat to the observer, even though introspectively they say they have tremendous feelings. They don't seem to be able to relate emotionally to other human beings. And what's even more frightening, they don't seem to care to relate to other human beings.
Richard Lynch is an actor. Until June this year, he was also an LSD user.
On June the 28th, 1967, I had strolled into the park of Central Park, and with a half a gallon of gasoline, I set myself on fire under the influence of LSD. I have had quite a few LSD experiences. When I attempted my last trip, I had just finished a screen test with Columbia Motion Pictures, and my career was flowering. I was a prosperous, promising young actor. If you would ever tell me that I would go into Central Park and try to burn myself to death, I would say that you were out of your mind. If you've taken your last, what you call your last LSD trip, and you really want to be hip, well, dig it, man. Be hip. Lay off it, because it does affect the mind. I'm a perfect example of what LSD can do to the human mind.
I'm Tim Knight. During the course of filming this investigation into LSD, I took my own acid trip. It was important to do that, important to get a fuller, more meaningful understanding of the acid experience. I was one of the lucky ones. I came out of my trip apparently undamaged. In fact, I had a good trip. I tried to recreate that trip on film. That's what you saw in the dream sequence earlier. You saw a young girl on her own trip. But since it was impossible to reproduce her trip, I substituted my own. It was authentic. You take a trip like that, knowing the dangers, for a reason. You want to know what all the excitement is about. You want to know what the acid trip is. Now I've taken the trip and I know what it does. And I believe strongly, I am convinced, that the dangers of LSD far outweigh any benefits. The scientists agree. They agree that the acid trip, the LSD trip, is just not worth taking.